Hello all, this is Dr. Dwight Norman Jr., licensed clinical psychologist to practice in the state of California, founder of Alpha Beta Behavioral Psychological Services Incorporated, Higher Quality Psychology, and you are tuned in to Mental Health Monthly, where we discuss anything psychology and mental health related. Today's topic is the juvenile justice system. There's a lot to be said about our juvenile justice system, especially when you're talking about individuals that are underdeveloped, both cognitively, emotionally, and physically. The idea of a juvenile justice system to be separate from the adult criminal system is ideal and important for those exact factors. It should not be treated the same, it should be treated differently because of the developmental piece. However, over the years, the juvenile justice system has become more punitive. The more strict nature of our juvenile justice system and detentions have created this unique issue with our juvenile offenders. Detention and incarceration has been more strict, and some believe within our juvenile justice we have failed to create an environment to have the juvenile thrive. Although juveniles may be incarcerated, we do want to create a community and setting that is safe for them to be able to thrive. We want our juveniles to come back into the community and be positive, active members of society. The juvenile justice system was set up in the U.S. to reform our youth, to put things in place to encourage a safe environment, encourage positivity and adaptive functioning, adaptive behaviors. The goal was to safeguard from punitive criminal actions in courts. This idea was encouraged to rehabilitate rather than punish. Sadly, the trend over the past decade has been more stringent laws for juvenile offenders. Also, the policy changes have made it very difficult for individuals that go through the system to get out and live the life that they once thought that they could. It's been more difficult for our juveniles to come back into society and live a prosperous life. And as of late, there has been a rise in juveniles in custody, juvenile cases, juvenile court appearances, and juvenile incarceration. And sadly, there are not many policies or practices to safeguard juveniles with mental health issues. So as you can imagine, if these things are missed, it can be much more difficult for an individual that suffers from, say, anxiety, conduct disorder, PTSD, depression, to be able to manage themselves in a setting where these things are not taken in high regard. As apart from this, incarceration is not intended to safeguard from mental health or physical problems. In fact, it does just the opposite. It makes it more difficult for our youth to come out into the communities, find viable employment, develop interpersonal relationships, and to trust authority figures. When we're talking about the disparity in the juvenile justice system, statistics reveal that there is a definite increase when you're comparing young black men and interactions with the juvenile justice system in comparison to young white men. Unfortunately, such disproportionate factors raise the question of equality and fairness within our juvenile justice system. Even worse still, more black children face higher risks for crime. Things such as living in poverty, having to grow up much quicker than you probably would like, having to add to families and be the breadwinner at a young age, not having the resources that other individuals have, and of course being treated differently by individuals in power or of authority. Detention of juveniles disrupts an individual's life. And in fact, most of the detention centers are overcrowded, which raises health concerns and safety issues for both the individual served and staff at the detention centers. There has been tons of research that discuss the differences between detention centers and other programs that can be served with individuals that are juveniles and that are high risk to the community. This is an important topic that I believe has not been addressed enough. Instead of having detention centers, maybe put more time and effort into developing community-based programs that serve the purpose of rehabilitation of our youth, giving the resources, giving the tools to be able to understand what they're going through, and proceed by doing things in an adaptive manner. Doing what works in a way that works for everyone else, and really focusing in on each individual and how they process things as far as their thought process, and give them tools to be able to manage what's going on. Although there has been elements in the process of correcting or even serving our juvenile population that have come into contact with the law, there have been some upsides. There has been some talk around assisting, developing, and creating other community-based programs, and also addressing the mental health concerns of many of our juveniles that are in detention centers currently. It would be important to serve this population in the ways that fit them. So being more client-centered, juvenile-centered, and family-centered would be important considerations when you're developing these programs. And the research indicates for juvenile offenders, as they get older, those juvenile offenses tend to decrease. The maturity level grows, the cognitive ability expands, and you no longer see juveniles behaving in a way that present criminal behavior or criminal manner. These such patterns emphasize the need for juvenile justice reform. Now, we're not saying to completely disregard the behavior. We would like to hold the juvenile responsible for their actions, but we also would like to teach them there's a different way. You have other options. There's other things that you can do. However, it's very hard to deny that the zero tolerance policies that are in place now for our juveniles is just not acceptable. And in fact, it has hindered so many. And these policies need to be revisited, revamped, and basically changed to better fit the individuals that are being served. Research has found that healthy psychological development within adolescents is based off of the social network, developing strong interpersonal relationship skills by interacting with adults of authority that you can count on, trust, and depend on to take care of you is highly important. Outside of that is connections with peers, friends, and developing relationships that are of the positive manner. Surrounding yourself by individuals, or surrounding our children, our youth, with individuals that are like-minded and are really striving to do better for themselves is highly important when we're talking about psychological development for adolescents. The need to develop more developmentally informed ways to interact with our juvenile population need not go overseen. However, in many cases, juveniles are treated just like adults, from encounter with the police, interrogation with the police, to the courts with the charges and convictions. Now, reform programs can have a huge impact on high-risk youth. Now, these programs have to focus on family interaction, and family support. Otherwise, these individuals would just fall through the cracks. Family involvement is critical in the process and the reform of our juvenile justice population, and especially critical and important when we're talking about reducing the offenses and reoffending of such individuals. Now, treating youth fairly is another part that should be considered when we're talking about reform of the juvenile justice process. Youth must be treated fairly and with dignity. Juvenile courts must ensure that our juveniles are being represented by individuals that are competent and have the ability to give the service that they need as far as legal aid goes. The cognitive ability of the individual being served is also important when we're talking about juvenile justice court. It would be important for the juvenile to really understand the process before being put through it. I mean, how can someone be charged for something or even stand their day in court if they don't understand the process? Although over the past several years there have been humongous changes and some real focus on juvenile justice and the court system for juveniles, that has been good. We're getting closer and closer to what we need, but we're still far, far away. Continued attention on this topic to be able to assist this specific population is imperative for us to move forward in juvenile justice reform. Thank you for tuning into this video from Mental Health Monthly. I'm Dr. Dwight Norman Jr., Alpha Beta Behavioral, Higher Quality Psychology, and we're out.